Ooh, baby, you know what it's worth.
I hope no one else is doing a bit, but I'm doing a bit.
Daddy's got a pod.
I'm Casey Kasem, and this one's for the perverts.
Join us in our strange ritual.
That is time-traveling love smut.
I can only say horny in one season opener.
A medium amount of fun and an extra large amount of sweaty.
From the minds that brought you Giraffe and Amerisaur.
No regrets, no masters.
I got dick jokes to make, man. Leave me alone.
This is good. This is good for anyone.
This one's going to be weird. I'm very interested to see where this goes.
Hello and welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong. In this show, we take time out of our busy adult lives to talk about comic books, video games, and you're upset that Wizards of the Coast made a bad decision that disenfranchises its established players to chase new players? What are you, new here?
Everybody set the egg timer.
That's not what they did. They're trying to make toys, literal toys, into a video game as service. It's different.
It's different, but echoes of the same.
You can't go fizz to dig, so that's the problem there. You can go dig to fizz.
They should listen to us more.
Yeah.
This is about Wizards announcing that they're doing more IP-based sets in Magic and making them standard legal. And we'll talk more about that in the post-show if we want.
I have nothing to add because I'm going to buy all the Final Fantasy cards, and that's just it.
I know, and
I'm going to do
buy all the Marvel
and you're going to
ones.
buy the Spider-Man cards, and like we're going to shove it down our stupid fucking faces. I'm going to buy the new 5th edition DM guide. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to be happy while I do it, but I'm going to do it.
Andrew, I will find you a free PDF and send you
Well,
a free PDF.
yeah. I mean, let me be clear. I'm going to buy a $3 version of the PDF that I found on Reddit, but like...
Okay, I respect
Spade's a spade.
I respect you tipping $3.
Yeah.
For the
You toss a coin to your Witcher. No, the first time I bought a player, famously, Todd makes fun of me because the first time I bought a player's handbook in my entire life was last year.
And he bought the Spanish one.
I bought a Spanish language
the perfect
version.
time to buy a player's handbook.
Yeah, I thought about getting into this thing called D&D. Anyway, let's do this.
I like
dumb episode.
this is the handshake meme of you and me buying a Haggadah from my grandma is going for the Spanish edition.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You get it.
Remember, the 5th of November. You know, like the day this episode comes out.
That's today.
The flimsiest of topics of connections we've ever made.
Did you guys know that that's from a real poem and based on a real thing that happened and not something Alan Moore just made up to sell Guy Fawkes masks? Did you know that Guy Fawkes is a real person and not someone people online made up to be insufferable?
Wait, I thought you mean Alan Moore didn't make up Anonymous? That's wild.
I know. It's crazy. I'm learning this for the first time today as well. Well, because of how well V for Vendetta ensured that we would never forget the gunpowder plot of 1605, DT! Publishing has decided to enter the graphic novel game with our own graphic novel that uses a real historic event as a jumping off point.
I gotta say, hold on, Kyle. I like what you're doing here. I'm gonna let you finish.
Why?
Andrew, I take issue with you saying this is the flimsiest setup we've ever done. I think this one's kind of concrete. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. It's not the flimsy. It's the flimsy. It's on the flimsier side.
Yeah, it's definitely on the flimsy side.
It's definitely not est. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not ist. You could walk across this bridge.
It's the flimsiest topic that Todd has not hosted.
Get him.
Okay, fair.
Get him.
I like that.
Kick him while he's down.
Get him while he's not here to defend himself.
Yeah.
So, to kick off our foray into graphic novel publishing, I have brought in some of the preeminent scholars of history and print media, all in air quotes, to help pitch the next great historically based graphic novel. Joining us today are Matt Jack-a-Dandy Cole and Andrew Axel Press Button Henderson.
Hell yeah.
And because this is such an important matter, we brought in, and because Todd's not here, we brought in a ringer. So please welcome back to the show, Eric Special Executive Silver.
It's me. I'm turning this podcast into a games as service.
Yeah. We literally were like, oh, we should do a history episode. We need to bring Eric back.
I just love, first of all, I'm charging you each $12 for the battle pass. Second of all, I like how I was thinking about my other episodes and I'm like, oh yeah, like I did connect history to video games and then we did that again, but I really just was in my wheelhouse with like the 1920s for that. And now it's like, no, Eric's the guy who likes history.
Yeah.
Now it's your thing.
Yeah, it's your thing now.
Yeah. It is. We've got a guest for WoW. We've got a guest for food, and now you're our guest for history.
Yeah.
You'll notice I only like the 1920s and now. I only like the 20s. You'll see.
I will admit, it was a miss that we didn't bring you on for put Sonic in a public domain novel.
Yeah,
but maybe we'll come back to that later.
That's a deep well. We can.
Yeah,
I think I already
nearly
did
infinite.
Gatsby. I can't do that again, but I do. That is cool. That is cool as hell.
Also, I'd like to note that you get to quit caring about current events in 6 years, and I think that's neat.
That's true. Yeah, I'm gonna be full dad mode. I'm only gonna be hearing about what goes on in podcasts. History podcasts, just like vaguely left of center white men with 25-page scripts just barreling it towards me.
Yeah.
So, authors, what historic event are you using as your jumping off point for your graphic novel? Is this comic based on the actual event, or does the story only use it as a inspiration? Matt.
Kyle, I'm going to take you back. It's the night of October 30th, 1938. I'm a little sad I didn't get this one into Spooktacular Express, but that's okay, because we're doing a 5th of November thing, so it's still relevant. Anyway, it's the night of October 30th, 1938. Families across the country are nearly halfway through the evening block of primetime radio. Just after 8 p.m., the Chase and Sanborn Hour takes its first break of the evening. During that first musical interlude of the program, a portion of the audience flipped from NBC to CBS, just in time to hear an interview with Professor Richard Pearson. Pearson was, at the time, being interviewed by CBS reporter Carl Phillips at the observatory in Princeton, New Jersey, about breaking news reports of explosions seen on the distant planet of Mars. Before audiences had a chance to flip back to Chase and Sanborn, both Professor Pearson and reporter Carl Phillips had made their way to Grover's Mill, where a large metallic cylinder had landed on the Wilmoth farm. What followed, no one could have predicted, as listeners heard tell of aliens vaporizing citizens with heat rays. A panic unlike any the nation has ever seen filled the streets. Riots jammed phone lines. Mass traffic jams and more decimated the American culture. Or did they?
Oh my God.
And that is how I'm starting off
What a tease.
my graphic novel about the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast.
Oh.
Not based on the story War of the Worlds, just the time that they did it on the radio.
The SEO for this for your choice is so tough, Matt. I'm so sorry.
More heady than I expected.
Oh man,
We're out there, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a last minute pivot on this one. I was 2 hours ago, I was hit in the face with an idea, and it was to copy another movie that only I've seen. So that's what we're doing today.
Good. Great, even. Andrew, what do you got?
Yeah, so when I was thinking through what quote unquote event, because again, pretty vague direction that we gave ourselves, I had a tough time thinking through something that wasn't like a huge bummer. So in order to think of what aren't bummers, I thought about doomsday cults. Great.
Good start.
As one does.
Me and my partner when we're looking for something to watch on a Saturday.
Precisely. Precisely
The
that.
only reason to get Netflix.
Also, precisely. You both hit the nail on the head. Now, as Eric and Matt very well know, doomsday cults, while grim, are usually fun, can be fun explorations and totally explorations into like the real history, but more importantly, like the human psyche. Like, why do these things happen? How do these things happen? And then, you know, kind of like watching the movie James Cameron's Titanic, you already know the ending, right? You already know that doomsday come and goes. And that's what I find the most interesting about the spiraling of a doomsday cult, right? because it happens for every single one, right? You got the Branch Davidians, Shinrikyo, the People's Temple, any of the like Netflix Christianity splinter groups, right? Like they all devolve the same way. No matter how big they get, no matter how powerful the message becomes, the date comes and goes. The date always comes and goes, right? There was a joke in Parks and Rec where it was like, the guy comes to Leslie's office every week and it was like, well, actually, it's this month, right? And like that's kind of what happens is like the cult leader's like, well, okay, actually, we beefed it on this one, guys. It's actually I had the dates backwards. It's next month, but they can only do that for so long, and then that's until people start to realize that they're being scammed or grifted. So this graphic novel asks the question, what if one of these doomsday cults was actually correct?
I would like to give Andrew a point because his is the one that is actually probably a graphic novel.
Thank you. Yes, it has big. It has big. Go ahead.
I'm waiting to see where he zigs instead of zags, but I think
you're not going to expect it. And then let's take a step further and posit. What if the one that got it right was everyone's favorite space cult from the late '90s, Heaven's Gate?
Okay,
so
the best ad Kool-Aid ever put out.
Not that. Hey, that's Jonestown.
That's Jonestown.
Yeah, that's People's Temple.
Okay. Go ahead. You keep
please.
No, I need to see where you go.
Okay.
This is a real Michael Jordan was the best NBA player of all time choice to get put in to choose Heaven's Gate. Like, no.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
No, I am going to say it. Wait, I lied. I am going to say it. Are you just going to do Left Behind, that Christian book series my dad liked? I feel like we're just going to do a Left Behind.
No.
I feel like he's doing Evangelion, but
it could be Evangelion.
Guys, neither of you are right.
Okay.
Good.
So, opening panel. We see an image of the March 1997 video of Marshall Applewhite that's called Doe's Final Exit. Have any of you guys ever seen this video? It's creepy. It's creepy as hell.
No, I grew up Jewish. Next question.
Fair.
Off to YouTube I go.
Okay. Yeah, youth group was a wild time. So Marshall Applewhite was famously the leader of Heaven's Gate. He would record these videos, and if you don't know what he looks like, Matt's Googling him and will tell you. He's got these big, no pun intended, doe eyes. And he just kind of like stares wistfully into the camera. And he talks like this. And it's meant to be calming, but it's because this was a video. It's like watching the video from The Ring, because it's also like filmed really poorly and you can hear the like CRT static. It's creepy. But anyway, we open on an image of that video where he famously lays out his plans for a mass suicide as a means to commune with the Hale-Bopp comet. It's a story that a lot of people know because it was happening while we were alive. Applewhite, the story goes, Applewhite convinced his followers that this ritual suicide timed with the comet's approach over Earth would lead their spirits to basically ride the comet, not to heaven, which is like a joke people make, but their whole thing was, riding to another plane of existence, basically. Aliens would take them to another plane of existence. Now, this is the flip, right? During the video, we pan out and we see a mysterious figure watching the feed on some very clearly alien-looking device, and they just say the line, "It's time." Cut to the setting, Heaven's Gate compound, Rancho Santa Fe, California. The date is March 22nd, 1997. This is the night of the mass suicide at the hands of Heaven's Gate. A crazed Marshall Applewhite is addressing a room full of people wearing identical black shirts and black sweatpants. Famously, everybody in the room were wearing black sweatpants because he got them for cheap. True quote.
I love a bundle.
Yep.
Some of the people there very invested. Some aren't. Some are half listening, and few are even like huddled in the corners crying. Everybody knows what's happening, and the vibe is heavy, to say the least. Applewhite, at this point, calling himself Doe, tells the crowd that a comet is just about here. And he gestures he literally has a cup of pudding in his hand, because this is how they did the ritual suicide. They ate pudding that was laced with phenobarbital and chased it with vodka.
But it was like chocolate and then a line of phenobarbital.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you make those like dirt cups.
That's right.
So
that's right. That's right.
And the gummy worms.
Yeah, it's the 60s housewife special. So he consumes the pudding, he gulps the vodka down, and then instructs the crowd to do the same. It's at this point where a bright yellow orb circle appears behind Marshall Applewhite. and we zoom in, and a bright blue electric blade sticking out of his chest, surrounded by pooling blood. Behind Applewhite, we see 3 humanoid-looking figures, kind of looking like Creature from the Black Lagoon or Zelda Zora, like the evil Zora from Link to the Past, you know? But they're like in like deep, dark green and blue scaly armor. The one in front addresses the terrified group of people. There is no need to consume these savage tools for self-destruction. The denizens of Earth have officially become annexed by the Kret Empire. Understandably, you do not yet know what it is worth, but effective immediately, heaven is a place on Earth.
Good, Andrew Henderson. Good.
Once again, would like to give Andrew points because Gerard Way is listening to this.
He's a big fan. Big fan of DT.
Yeah, man. This has Umbrella Academy vibes. The actual graphic novel, not the Netflix show, but it has real Umbrella Academy vibes all over.
I thought about how do I lean in harder to the comic bookiness, and that was where we got What If Aliens? So,
yeah, dang. I really like that direction. I also feel like I should have given more of my twist away because I don't know. I felt like twist was a second answer thing, and now I feel like I know so much about your thing.
I haven't given up the full bit yet.
Good. Oh, I'm so excited.
I did need to land the plane that is the title because that is the title of my graphic novel, Heaven is a Place on Earth.
Hell yeah.
Ooh, baby. You know what it's worth.
All right, you got me.
All right. Love the alien bit. Love the title here, Andrew. Let's see, Eric, what you brought for us today.
Okay, I want to foreground similar things that Andrew did of like why this graphic novel. And I think that the setting is really helpful and is going to be a lot of fun to draw and to illustrate. I think that there's a cast of characters that in real life are actually quite similar. And by sketching them out and characterizing them and maybe even color coding them, that would be really helpful to do, especially on a bunch of black and whites of the setting. And also, you got to explain a lot of stuff for historical settings. I think when you guys were prepping this, there were a lot of choices of like doing like the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald or the Great Locomotive Chase. And I'm like, that's where I was starting from. And I'm like, I have to explain so much so someone cares about this.
There was some real hard shit in the notes. We definitely like dialed it back just a bit.
But even like, you know, I think that the movie The Big Short tried to do this in movie form, but it's so much easier to do in graphic form. And I'll get into that, but I want to foreground. That's why I chose all this stuff. Here's the thing you need to know about Iceland. Is that it's the perfect place to pull off a heist. The country's economy...
Heistland.
Oh, good. You beat me to it.
Heistland. Hopefully that's not the name of your graphic novel that I just covered. Okay, great.
The country's economy got really fucked up in the 2000s because Iceland's 3 biggest banks found a way to get rich off of buying up foreign debt, and then it got all fucked up like we all did in 2008. The banks defaulted on $85 billion in debt, so the currency collapsed and unemployment has soared. The IMF actually gave them $2 billion so that their whole country did not explode. And again, this is Iceland, the one that everyone knows just from Mighty Ducks, describing that it's green and Greenland is ice.
Literally the extent of my Iceland knowledge.
So in 2014, there was a futuristic way to get Iceland back into cash. That is crypto, my friends.
No way.
If you don't know anything about crypto, we are in 2024. We all know about crypto now. But
go watch YouTube. Yeah. Literally get anything on YouTube.
But ultimately, it's like, imagine you get a computer to do a bunch of Sudoku, and it does harder and harder Sudoku, and it gets a little prize, and that prize at one point was worth $20,000.
That's a pretty good description of cryptocurrency, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But the wonderful thing about Iceland, especially in a post-bus time in the mid-2010s, there was so much unused space. It is super cold. There's geothermic vents that you can turn into energy, and there's no crime because of the first 3 things. So it's the perfect place to put massive data centers to mine Bitcoin.
Sure.
But no crime means someone has to do the crime. I think that George Clooney said that in Ocean's 11.
An impeccable impression.
Yeah.
So in January 2018, over 600 computers valued at $2 million were stolen from a Bitcoin mining facility in Reykjavik, Iceland. That night was only the beginning of the biggest heist in the country's history, and was actually the final of 3 heists executed by one team. What followed were prison breaks, deception, and an attempt at a perfect crime.
Whoa. What a teaser.
It's going to be cool. It's going to be cool. In fact, cold or chilly.
Eric, little known fact, I love heists. A good heist.
Yeah.
You got me. Matt, Andrew, I'm sorry. You're starting.
No, it's
starting
fine.
You're starting from behind here.
The only thing that can make Kyle more in is if you involve time travel in said heist.
Time travel and a train are the other two
Yeah,
things I need for my heists.
I will foreground. I don't have a train, but I do have a very funny named tunnel, which is pretty close.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
We'll see if we get there. All right. So we've got our historic event, our jumping off point here. Now, authors, tell me, what's the novel about? What's the plot? Who are the characters, and what part of this event are we looking at here? Is it just a reference, or are we telling the whole story? Matt, kick us off.
Yeah, so I know I left us on a bit of a cliffhanger, but I've kept this explanation to this specific answer, and I will explain why. So the prologue of this graphic novel and the soapbox I'm about to stand on now is about the real world impact of the 1938 broadcast of War of the Worlds. Now, if you have ever heard a story about that broadcast, it's probably been about how it created this mass panic and people freaked out all over the place, and there were calls into every police station across the country, and people thought we were really being invaded by aliens, and everybody went crazy. None of that's really true. That is what everybody
Really?
said, because in 1940, somebody wrote a research paper and said, did you know 1.3 million people heard this broadcast? And then about 35 years later, when actual rating numbers were accessible, they did a rating survey and discovered that like maybe 20,000 people heard it, and that's about it. So for years there was this whole understanding and belief that when the War of the Worlds broadcast went on the radio, everybody heard it and thought they were actually being invaded, but that's not really the case. My graphic novel poses the question of, what if that was the case? What if that panic was so incredible that it really did decimate the American culture? And that's where we pick up in chapter 1, as we are going to follow a girl named Evelyn, an average 12-year-old girl in a not-so-average family of farmers in Rock Mill, New Jersey, just a couple miles north of Grover's Mill, where, again, this completely fictitious radio play was said to take place.
And to be clear, it's not what if War of the Worlds happened, it's what if the chaos from the World of Wars broadcast was okay. That's interesting.
You got it. Okay, so
Okay.
her parents, not average farmers. See, Helen and George Wells, they are among some of the earliest of a group of rural Americans preparing for the next great war. They call themselves the Preppers. And what we are going to follow is a 12-year-old girl's experience being hustled into a 1938 bunker built under a New Jersey farm because her dad thinks the world is ending because of aliens. But again, it was just a radio play. So what does that mean? What does the world look like? That means you have 1.3 million Americans across the country going underground, committing heinous acts, starting riots, causing panic because they heard a radio play. So this is the from history. This never happened. But what if it did? What if media could be so influential that it would cause mass panic across the country? That is the question we seek to answer in this graphic novel, War of the Words.
Hey.
Matt,
Okay.
I only have one note that unfortunately when you go woke, you go broke. So I just don't know how well you're going to do.
That's a big talk coming from the cryptocurrency campus. Let me tell you what.
Hey, it's in Iceland, so it's somewhere indeterminate our political spectrum.
I want to thank whoever put this dumb image of Marshall Applewhite in our
It's
notes.
a very,
so
very
cursed.
good and
I
dumb
tried
image.
to do a page break so I didn't have to look at it, and then Matt deleted it.
Oh,
It's a lot.
I cleared out the page
Oh, okay.
break. I'm sorry, Matt. I really like this
No, this is
perspective.
good. It's like, what if The Walking Dead happened, but
Yeah.
there were no zombies? Like,
Exactly.
I like it.
I was imagining, what if the plot of Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds movie,
Yeah,
but
that's
there
it.
were no aliens. Same thing,
Yeah.
You know,
different flavor.
one of those is much closer to the actual 1938 War of the Worlds story, and it's not the one you think, but we don't need to talk about that until the post show.
Great, Andrew.
Yeah. So, Kyle, part 1 of Heaven is a Place Called Earth is going to retell the story of the rise of Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate, of course, a sci-fi commune turned doomsday cult. Because it's important to know when you learn about Heaven's Gate, it wasn't always... It's what makes it different from, like, Branch Davidians, from Jonestown, is the fact that it didn't start out the same way it ended. And centered on this story are the two leaders, Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite. The latter, you've seen his big, stupid eyes. The former, not as many people know about, but she was the true leader of Heaven's Gate up until she died. So Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite, they called themselves Tea and Doe, which was inspired by her love for the sound of music. As I said, what makes this story different from a lot of other cults is that, by all accounts, Bonnie Nettles was a true believer. She truly believed, or at least we don't know, she's been dead for 30 years, but it's generally assumed that she truly believed that she was of alien origin, or she had some connection to aliens. And whether that was like an angelic thing, a Jesus thing, or an actual alien thing, like, she truly believed that she was meant for something extraordinary. It literally, like, the literal definition of extraordinary. So the early days of Heaven's Gate is really Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles meeting and kind of evangelizing. Marshall Applewhite, son of a preacher, grew up in the church in very, very theocratic establishments. Bonnie Nettles, ex-nurse, so very much like a person of the people, right? So they kind of took their act on the road and started getting a little bit of a following. But again, it was all very swimmy, like new age hippie kind of nonsense. This is the 70s, right? Like, they're nerds and they're attracting other nerds. So this kind of becomes just like a fun hippie space cult, or space, not even cult, a social club, right? Very, very early days. But this is the part which we're going to flip to the other story that's being told here, the story that's complete nonsense and made up. And this is the story of the Kret. So we open on the scene of a vast ocean with the caption, Planet H34-V1N, aka Heaven. You got it. Heaven is a completely aquatic planet, in that the entire planet is just one massive ocean, no land mass. Through exposition, we learned an aquatic humanoid species called the Kret evolved, just like humans did on Earth. One day, some of the species developed wings and took flight, basically meaning there are now two versions of Kret. There are skyfaring Kret and there are oceanic Kret. Several thousand years later, the skyfaring Kret create their own kingdom in the clouds, yada yada, ancient floating kingdom. We've all seen this. Ancient aliens, blah, blah, blah.
Some kind of interdimensional star child.
Aliens.
Thank you.
I
You got one, Matt?
no, because I can tell you're setting up for something, and I haven't figured out what it is yet.
You're not
I've
gonna
pulled up
figure
the
it out.
Heaven is a Place on Earth lyrics to see if I can get ahead of this, Matt, and I got nothing. So
I like how
you're
you're
not
doing
gonna
this,
you're not
and I'm
doing
like, can I summarize a Vanity Fair story for you guys?
Now, generations of technical advancement would alter the shape of the planet. As a result, the oceans rose in temperature, sudden storms begin breaking out. We're turning straight Matrix here. The seas become nearly unlivable, and the sky-faring Kret enslave the oceanic Kret for free labor, a tale as old as time. Centuries passed until one day, an oceanic Kret awakened mysterious psychic powers under significant emotional stress, also a tale as old as time. In a moment of panic, they call out for help, and the message was propelled light years away to the remote planet Earth. Cut to Bonnie Nettles receiving that psychic shriek for help late one night. It is this moment that she would go on to continue the chase. This moment where she set the belief that she was in fact connected to something bigger than us. Fast forward 3 years, it's now 1975. At this point in Heaven's Gate, Nettles and Applewhite have now amassed a small group of followers, and the real cult shit starts. This is when she gets another psychic transmission. This time, it's Gather. And so, they call themselves T and Del, and they convince their group of 100 or so followers to do the cult thing. No longer are they just like meeting up in libraries and stuff. They're saying, and this is what happened in 1975, they said, get rid of all of your worldly possessions, sell all your shit, get rid of all your stuff, give it to the cult. You're coming with us. Say bye to their friends and family. And that's like,
you're coming home.
That's the bookend, right? That's the bookend between like, we're no longer a group. We are a cult. 1 year later, Bonnie Nettles gets another transmission, but this time no words. Only a flood of pain and hopelessness rushing through her as she screams out in terror. She looks at herself in the mirror and pulls a tuft of hair right out of her head and then falls to the ground. Back in heaven, the psychic Kret known as Bop stands in horror over the lifeless bodies of their parents, the latest of which have been branded terrorists in the eyes of the sky-dwelling Kret. It's here that Bop vows the entire kingdom will be sunk to the bottom of the sea. And thus ends part 1. So it's a tale on two fronts.
I'm waiting for the trade paperback to come out. I can't follow this.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough.
Okay.
Sorry, no, I know that wasn't. I didn't want to be here. Let me say that again because that sounded rude. I'm waiting for the trade paperback to come out because I got to read all the issues in a row so I can keep all of the world building.
Right. I can't.
It's what it is.
It's month to month. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like reading through an X-Men book or a comic because every third panel is like, well, you have to read X-Force and you have to read Canadian X-Men. Like that's what this is for sure.
Yeah. I see writing on the wall, and I can't tell what it says yet, but I see it. I know it's there. I know you're connecting to something.
You're not gonna get it.
There's a shoe that hasn't dropped yet, and I know it's there, waiting to drop.
He made up an alien name race. I know it's a pun. It's a pun.
You're never gonna get it.
And while we wait, Eric, why don't you tell us?
I'm just waiting for like Obama to be visited by one of these guys. Like that's gonna be reverberations. I'm waiting. Okay, let me tell you the majority of this story, Kyle. Let me tell you the best part of the heist, which of course is the ramp up, right?
Please.
All right.
Yes.
Our main dude, his name is Sindri Stephenson. He's a man with a history of burglary and drug possession, but he's been clean for a while. He works as a web designer in Iceland, which is the saddest thing I've ever said out loud.
That is the loneliest number.
Yeah.
But he obviously wants to live the high life. So he, or a mysterious man named Mr. X, that Sindri swears all throughout this entire story organized the entire heist, decides to steal computers to make their own Bitcoin mine. Sindri, if he was running the whole thing, would own it, but he says that Mr. X would cut him in for a percentage that would give him $1.2 million a year forever. So that's worth it to get a crew, right?
Yeah.
As Sindri says it, Mr. X assembles a motley crew of Icelandic men in their 20s, all of whom happen to know each other, because there's like only 340,000 people in Iceland.
I was going to say, there's only 50 men in Iceland, so of course
Arctic Ocean's 12.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. We'll keep doing these. We'll keep doing. I already had the Icelandic job was on there, but
I
Yep,
like that.
yep.
That's pretty good.
okay. So first we got the muscle. There's Matthias, who is a quiet, husky guy who worked in a home for special needs kids. That's straight from Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair. I don't know why you read our main man Matthias like that. But there's also his younger brother Peter, whose nickname was the Polish.
Hell yeah.
Incredible.
And then there's the face, who is Victor the cutie Johansson, who is a good-looking guy with a degree as a systems administrator. And then, according to police, there were the brains. Sindri's childhood friend and brother in crime, Hafi the Pink, who had organized jobs from where he was living in Thailand and Spain.
So that's Ben Affleck's brother. That's who plays.
Yeah. Casey
character.
Affleck is
That's
playing
Casey
Affleck.
That's our Casey Affleck role.
Yeah.
Yep.
I already think that this is better than the Instigators. I'll tell you that much. Okay. So now let's get into the heist. December 5th, 2017, as flurries of sleet and snow buffeted Iceland, Sindri and his crew broke into Aldgrim Consulting Data Center, and they stole 104 Bitcoin computers with power sources, graphics cards, and assorted supplies. 5 days later, on December 10th, the Borealis data center told police that someone had tried and failed to break into their facility, attempting to disarm the alarm by gluing the security sensors. But here we go. Let's go to the big score. But only a month later, in January 2018, here's the big one, 600 computers valued at $2 million. The way that they did it was that they convinced the security guard to help them. Why did they have to convince one security guard? One security guard knew all the codes and where all the cameras were and the best ways to get in and out of the facility. The security guard also all gave them jackets, so they just walked right in, took 600 computers and put them on a truck.
Holy shit.
They used, in a matter of hours and a lot of heavy lifting, those crypto mining computers have been loaded onto a truck by hand. Now, Mr. X is 11 or Mr. X is 5, I guess. No, it's 6 because Julia Roberts shows up later in the movie. It seems like everything's going really well. But later at the end of the book, we're going to get to the part. This isn't even the wild part of the story so far. This is all of the heist stuff.
This is all standard heist.
Heist stuff. But we're going to figure out what happens in the final part of the book.
Okay.
Man, I like that it feels that it's a lot easier to do crime in Iceland.
It makes sense that it would be, you know?
To be clear, for legal reasons, I'm not saying go do crime in Iceland. I'm just saying it feels like it's probably easier to get away with it.
Debate this cannot recommend or not recommend committing crimes in Iceland.
Frankly, I had no stance.
Yeah,
no
we
stance either
are
way.
completely Switzerland on crimes in Iceland. I do think it's interesting, and it makes me realize like how many James Bond movies end up in Iceland or Iceland adjacent for their big bad guy. And I don't know that I put together because cold, but it's pretty apt.
The best crime deterrent is cold.
Yeah.
The craziest thing to me about this whole thing is that they're not trying to steal money. They're like, what if I go to these, and you can only imagine these like converted airplane hangars and discarded U.S. Army bases that has rent is dirt cheap and just has a bunch of data centers in it. And like there's one dude standing outside, hey, can I have these computers? Yoink. Like that's it.
Right. Right. Because the whole thing supposes that everything inside I mean, they're not stealing diamonds. Like there is no like, there's a set value for like maybe like a new graphics card out of the box, but there's not like, I don't know if there's a thriving like secondary market for, I'm sure there's graphics cards, but like it's weird because knowing about the chip shortage in 2020, 2021, like definitely recolors this, but like at the time they definitely took a gamble.
But even then you're stealing 600 graphics cards that you could hawk for $300 a pop.
I mean,
like,
right, because it's like stealing it's like 5,000 catalytic converters.
Yes, yeah.
But at least that's attached to a car, so someone's like, "Oh, car doesn't work."
Yeah.
They interviewed in the Vanity Fair piece the woman who ran the final place that they hit, and she was just like, her kids said, "Hey, pay $50,000 to get this going. And she's like, I don't know how it goes. They just hit it. I don't know. I'm just like, how did you get away with this? I guess you steal something that people don't know is valuable. You can just walk in.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It is. I can't wait. I can't wait to find out what happens.
Oh
next.
my God. The last part is so stupid. Get ready. Okay.
All right. Well, good, because that's where we're at in the questionings. So, by now, we all know that history rarely gives us a clean 3-act structure with a resolution. Does your novel? If so, what parts of history did you have to modify to get a conclusion? If not, what does part 2, or what does the second arc, or the continuation of this story look like as more issues come out? Matt.
Yeah, Kyle. So War of the Words is a story.
Save.
Thank you. In 3 acts, and it does have kind of a clear 3-act structure. This is one book. We're not going to do a big long series of these. So Act 1, you've got the initial panic. What I think is pretty common knowledge if you know fun facts about the War of the Worlds broadcast, or if you don't, then not common knowledge at all, is that the first commercial break was delayed by like 15 minutes, and that's where some of the panic came from. And the idea is that the commercial break that was supposed to say, hey, we're doing a radio play, hit so late that everybody had already turned off their radios and started rioting in the streets. And again, that's the reality that we are living in. So Helen and George Wells have already shut off the radio in Act 1.
Oh, Helen and George Wells, you fucker.
Yeah.
I just got that.
Yeah. Yeah. So they already, got their daughter down into the bunker. Now, Act 2, a little bit like we talked about in the last question, there is a mass panic. If 1.3 million Americans rioted in the streets in 1938, like a stupid research study in 1940 said, that's the equivalent of 1% of the population. 1% of America has gone completely off grid. That doesn't sound like much. In 2024, that'd be about 350,000 people, which is about the population of Iceland.
That is one Iceland, you're right.
We would notice one Iceland missing from the population.
Sure.
We might not think it, but we would.
You sure would, especially if it was all centered in New England, like the stories say that it was. So you've got 1% of America off grid in New England. And these people have completely separated. We do a whole second act about what living in this bunkered down off-grid society is like. Because of the limitations of the late 30s, there's really not a lot of communication exchange outside of this sheltered off culture. So what happens then in Act 3 when our young girl Evelyn finally meets someone from outside of this sheltered lifestyle? She meets someone who encourages her to ask questions, to look deeper, to discover that maybe her family are the crazy ones, and that there are actually 99% of Americans that are on the grid and never had this mass panic, and the aliens never did invade. So we have this whole situation where a go back happens between, do I go back to the real world? Do I stay with the sheltered lifestyle? I'm scared to leave. It's kind of like The Giver. And then the big reveal at the end is that they actually were invaded by aliens, and all of the people from outside of the sheltered society were really aliens disguised as humans trying to get the last bastion of humanity out of their shelter. They were aliens the whole time. War of the Worlds actually happened, but it's about the power of communication and the long-standing effects of broadcast media.
Okay, honestly, Matt, really good. But this has all of the cynicism and preachiness of a freshman year everybody reads this book.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yes. Honestly, I could not have summed up the attitude that I wanted to author this graphic novel with more than like, I am a first semester sophomore in college and I'm writing a paper and I want my professor to know my feelings.
To know that I'm smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's top, middle, bottom, man. We thought there were aliens, so we panicked, and then we panicked for a while, and we decided maybe there weren't aliens, and aliens all the way down. That's graphic novel, baby.
Kyle, I think you should dock Matt a point because this is the plot of Fallout 76.
Oh, nobody's ever played that game.
I know. That's
No
why
one
I
has.
knew you were trying to pass it off of the podcast.
Oh, if Todd were here, he would have known, Matt.
R.I.P.
I'll pull the curtain back. What I'm really doing is 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah,
Cloverfield with John
Oh,
Goodman.
another movie that no one has seen.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, like I
Yeah,
said,
I
a movie
thought
that
it-
only I have seen.
I thought 10 Cloverfield Lane when you started, and then thought Fallout somewhere along the line.
I got confused because you boy in the striped pajamas right in the middle.
I had a moment where I was like, am I boys in the striped pajama-ing right now?
Man.
You never want to.
You never go full boy in the striped pajamas.
Matt, thank you for pushing Holocaust education back by 50 years. I really appreciate it.
In Matt's defense, that's the least Holocaust education has been pushed back in the past month.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair.
So
In a moment, 1,000 comic books screamed out in pain, and then deafening silence.
Andrew,
Sure.
pivot away from this topic.
Yeah, it's not better. It's different. So
Talk about the cult where everyone killed themselves.
So part 2 of my novel illustrates the change in Heaven's Gate from, again, this kind of like fun but eccentric sci-fi commune to full-on absolute doomsday cult. As I mentioned in the last prompt, Heaven's Gate's fall really began with the loss of Bonnie Nettles, aka T. Nettles died from a long-term battle with cancer in 1985, leaving Applewhite solely in charge. And famously, like, Applewhite was never the leader. He always kind of looked at Bonnie as like the spiritual and like the person in charge. And then after Bonnie Nettles died, he was kind of left with the bag and like didn't really know what to do with it. And that's when this becomes pretty sinister. So again, like, not to say things were utopian before, but I mean, this was still a cult. People again giving up all their possessions and money, but it was still like they were still people, they were still family. When Applewhite took over, it became much more militant and much more demeaning, unfortunately, as well. Now, heaven is a place on earth presumes that the reason Bonnie Nettles died and the source for cancer all comes from this nonsense psychic connection that she makes with a intergalactic Zora named Kret, or an intergalactic Zora named Bop, so the story of the Kret in parallel by 1980 on Earth, they're now officially locked in an all-out war against the skyfaring Kret. 5 Earth years later, the oceanic Kret, the Sneetches without stars, find a way to end the war. They accelerate the already degrading climate to envelop heaven in a storm so powerful that it would effectively go on forever, thus changing the landscape of the planet. This tempest erupts in a singularity point fixed right under the Skyfarers' main kingdom, decimating 90% of their population in one moment. Soon after, the remaining survivors are just that. They're picked off one by one or killed by ensuing storms. Bonnie Nettles died at the very same point that the singularity went off and cut short the lives of millions of Kret. The psychic channel that she had kept open basically overloaded her brain and she died instantly. So that's what we're changing here.
This really is Umbrella Academy. This
Yeah.
is like
Kinda is,
100% Umbrella
This
Academy.
is the
Yeah.
one with JFK in it. Like that's
Well, that was the blueprint, and then I had to
yeah.
I had to just change the names and the faces. So, following the genocide of the Skyfarers, the Oceanic Kret march upward with their psychic rebellion leader, now Emperor of the Kret. Soon after, the remaining aliens realize the climate of their planet is obviously too unstable, and a tale as old as time, they need to find a new home. Now, fortunately, Bop, the psychic one, had already established a link with intelligent life and had set their sights on Earth. It was then the Kret would initiate their plan to leave heaven and settle Earth for their own purposes. Working through a new host, which of course is Marshall Applewhite, the Kret begins sending more and more sinister psychic transmissions, connecting to the de-evolution of Heaven's Gate. Now, advanced as they were, the Skyfarers had not invested in traditional space travel, yada, yada, yada. They put all of their resources into molecular transportation, Star Trek beaming, so that they could beam themselves up from the skies to the ocean floor. So the new Kret Empire would spend 12 Earth years harnessing that technology so that they could beam themselves onto another planet. And that answer was the intergalactic probe that they used to celebrate their leader who made it all possible, which would be called Hail Bop. It's a probe called Hail Bop. That's the comment. And now...
Oh, okay. Okay.
Comment Hail Bop. You get it.
Andrew wanted us to
That was such a flare. It was such a flare that fizzled. Okay. Stick with me. We're almost there.
I'm here. I'm back.
Okay.
Now we are back to where the story begins. The actual singularity point. We're in the compound of Rancho Santa Fe, California. The rebel leader turned Emperor Bop stands in front of a crowd of confused cult members. He drops Marshall Applewhite's dead body to the floor. A few moments go by. Someone in the crowd asks naively. Someone asks, "So are you here to commune with all of us?" Bop looks back at the open portal and gestures for the thousands of other beings to come through. "No, this is an invasion. A Kret invasion."
Oh,
God
you
damn it.
motherfucker.
I was like,
Andrew
what is the
Henderson.
name of these fucking dudes from the Captain Marvel movies?
I'm
The
gonna punch you in the mouth.
Prestige.
I'm gonna punch you in the mouth through my microphone. Oh.
Oh, so this is a Marvel crossover, so DC can't get it later on in the
I can't hear you over the sound of me smoking a cigarette.
Eric, while Andrew finishes his cigarette, wrap up your story for us. How's this baby end?
Yeah, let's talk about cryptocurrency instead of 2 straight alien invasions, huh? Kyle, what's the...
I did mine first, to be fair.
That's fair. Kyle, what's the worst part of a heist movie?
The worst part of a heist movie? Usually when it, they have to bridge some gap in their plan so that they seem smarter than the audience, even though they weren't.
Oh, that's fair. See, I guess the thing I don't like about heist movies is when they get caught. Because it doesn't really...
Sure.
Because it happens when it happens, there's 20 minutes left in the movie, and you're like, what comes next? But you got to go through the whole thing.
We know it's not over here.
Yeah, then James Corden shows up, and you're like, oh my God. So luckily, I'm going to be able to just kind of whip through it because it doesn't really matter. But they do get caught. They're not actually that good at this. They're 5 dudes, or maybe 6 with Mr. X from Heistland, ready to put this together.
There's no crime there, so they're not trained. They're not practiced.
Right, yeah.
It's the first crime that's happened in Iceland in probably decades.
Well, the police were slow playing the first 2 heists because they didn't want people to freak out about it because crypto was is so important to this new Icelandic economy. But with the third one, they actually had to do something. They were also pretty sloppy. There is a photo from a CCTV in the Whale Fjord Tunnel, a 3.6 mile passage beneath the icy waters of the Halifjord Fjord. And
Excuse you.
Sindri was driving, and the cutie's tattooed arm was in the shot, so they identified him. So they were pretty sloppy. They also did it right before the first heist because they were excited to see the new spot. That's why they put it together. So they got caught. The funny thing about this is that Sindri escaped because Iceland doesn't have our prison industrial complex. I'm going to read you a quote from a reporter based in Iceland that was interviewed by Yahoo Finance. So he was in custody. He was arrested a few months after the last heist. The police had narrowed it down to him. He hadn't been charged yet, but he was still in custody for quite some time. He was staying at a low security prison. We have what to the US sounds strange, which is called an open prison, where the prisoners pretty much have the key to their own cell, but still everything is locked up tight during the night and they can't leave the premises. But he ran away and booked a ticket in the middle of the night and left the country. They don't have crime. They have so little crime that they're like, oh man, you're not gonna be a recidivist. Do your thing.
They can't even clock it.
Yeah.
I remember 10 years back, pictures from an Icelandic prison went around, and everyone was like, wow, that looks better than the apartment I'm currently living in. So
what's really funny about this Yahoo Finance article, which was also they had a podcast episode about it, was like they spent like a third of the episode talking about why crypto and a third of the episode talking about why this prison is like this. And they talk about recidivism rates, and they were like, yeah, it works really well when people feel like they're not in prison. And then it's like, and then Sindri walked out.
Except this one time.
Okay, so the thing is, Sindri once again beefed it. He went to Amsterdam from the prison, and he met up with Victor the Cutie and Hafi the Pink, and the trio took a photo in front of a department store in Amsterdam, smiling wide with wearing sunglasses, and Hafi posted the image and tagged it #Team Sindri.
Good.
Come on.
Amazing.
2 hours later, Sindri and his friends were arrested by the Amsterdam police.
I love when people can't help themselves but to tag themselves on Instagram.
You only do that if you're immediately disappearing forever.
No.
You don't hang out in Amsterdam for 2 more hours for the police to catch you.
Well, we'll come back to hold on to that moment, Kyle, because I first want to talk about how much prison time they all got. They went to court in December 5th, 2018. All the suspects entered the courtroom the same way they had entered the Bitcoin mines that they heisted, with their faces covered. Hafi, the Pink, wrapped his face in a Louis Vuitton scarf because that's who he is. So they all confessed to the crimes, and Sindri got 4.5 years in prison. 4.5 years. That's it.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a lot for what would in America be grand larceny.
Yeah.
Our muscle, Matthias, got 2.5. The Polish got 18 months. Victor, the Cutie, and the security guard got 15 to 20 months, in the 15, 20 months range. And they all had to pay back the police $116,000, I think collectively, for the legal costs of the investigation. Not that much time. There's 2 mysteries I need to know about, which I hope to explore in this graphic novel. The first is, did Mr. X even exist? Sindri, because he was in jail for less than 4.5 years,
Right.
still swears that Mr. X organized the whole thing. So I'm really excited. The whole graphic novel, there's like an outline of Mr. X as the 6th in this heist crew, constantly like organizing everything, just being around. So I think I really want to investigate if this person exists. Is this just a lie Sindri made without telling the guys? Did he do it with their consent? Is this a Tyler Durden situation? Does Mr. X really exist? Like, it can be any of those 4 options, honestly. But that's just like some graphic novel nonsense, right? Here's the actual thing I need to have explored. The police never found the computers.
Whoa, what? Hold on. What do you do with all those?
Well, what do you think they're doing, Matt? Because it's a Bitcoin heist, what do you think the computers are doing? Because Sindri rented out an old fish canning factory right before the heist happened, and they never looked into those because it doesn't matter to the heist stuff, and they never found any of the computers.
So my guy's just sitting in jail, just waiting for this passive income to tick up.
I was going to say, he's got that. That's why you always set up a passive income stream.
That's why you set up a passive income
So they also, 4 years later, Sindri probably takes up his phone. He's like, wow, Twitter has a new name. That's crazy. And he goes and meets
only weird thing.
And he goes and meets all of his boys. He meets Matthias and his brother, the Polish. He meets the Cutie,
Sure.
Hafi the Pink, and the outline of Mr. X. I feel like they all pull up with their cars into an abandoned parking lot, and you see this like really, really craggy used factory in the background. And I think they're all been color coded this whole time. So we see them come together, and they walk forward, and this outline figure throws these like big double doors open, and you see the glow of 1,000 computers just bing, 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 racking up Bitcoin. And these guys are actually going to live the heist that they always dreamed of. The big dreams that Mr. X beamed into Sindri's head. It actually fucking happened. They pulled it off. They actually pulled it off.
I love it.
I do think it's important that we once again say that we don't have any opinions on crime in Iceland.
I don't know.
Not a
4
single
years and $100,000. That's fine.
Sounds
I mean, honestly,
starting to develop some opinions on crime in Iceland, but I'm not going to say them on this podcast.
Well, they don't
We'll leave it
represent
at
the feelings on crime in Iceland of DT exclamation point HQ. Our personal feelings on crime in Iceland are not reflected by that of the larger
Fair.
organization.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, guys, these are all fantastic ideas for graphic novels. So fantastic, in fact, that DC Comics has acquired DT exclamation point publishing. So your next project to make sure your graphic novel is the one that gets published is when we come back from this break, please tell us how the characters from your novel are going to integrate into the larger DC Comics universe. Much like we saw the Watchmen, the characters from the Watchmen get integrated into the larger DC Comics. We will take those answers after this break.
This is Attach Your Resume, an interview podcast about online creators, how their jobs work, and how they got there. I'm Amanda McLaughlin.
And I'm Eric Silver. We've been making a living online as podcasters with our company Multitude for 7 years. And there are a lot of experiences we've had to deal with that no one could have prepared us for.
Such as starting a company with your friends and suddenly needing to send them tax returns.
Or intimidating a startup scooter company to pay you the $2,000 that they owe you.
Or maybe getting fired from a copywriting gig because you don't do improv comedy.
That's a real one. That one actually happened to me. And we want to share those experiences with you and invite on the people who make your favorite stuff online to share theirs too.
Think of this like a series of oral histories of jobs that require you to have a Twitter or a TikTok, or hearing the first-person stories behind seismic events in digital media that blew up the group chat.
Among the layoffs and AI slop, there are seeds that are blooming into a sustainable media landscape, and you can hear how that's all happening.
Attach Your Resume, where the best credential for deciding the future of media is actually making stuff. New episodes every Thursday until we run out and need to make more.
And now that you've attached your resume, can you copy it and make sure it's plain text? Because if there's any sort of rich text, my computer will explode.
Oh, yeah. Can you just paste it into this long form that was built on a Google Sheet before Google Sheets existed in 2002?
And can you take a screenshot and make sure it's a JPEG that's 3 kilobytes? That would be really great.
Oh, just restate your whole experience in a cover letter, actually.
Oh, did I say kilobytes? I meant bytes, just singular bytes.
Can you do an unpaid writing test?
All right, we're back. As I said before the break, DC Comics bought DT exclamation point publishing. Matt, take it away. Please tell us how the characters from your story are going to be integrated into the DC Comics universe.
Yeah, Kyle, honestly, it's pretty easy. I think most people, especially after listening to this podcast, might assume that the most influential piece of media to hit American culture in 1938 was the War of the Worlds broadcast. But comic fans might disagree with you, because in July of 1938, Detective Comics introduced the world to Kal-El's Superman in Action Comics #1. So, you know how I said they were all aliens, Kyle? Turns out one of those aliens landed in Kansas. Landed in Kansas as a small boy from another planet who looked a little bit human, maybe didn't have a belly button, unsure in this continuity, and that's how we're going to relaunch the origin. I know I did a Kyle XY instead.
I was going to ask if Kyle XY was owned by
Just let it
Smallville.
happen.
Yeah.
Just let it happen. Anyway, that's how we are going to relaunch World 1938. I think that's DC's naming convention. A new origin of Superman, where he came about to an Earth where 1% of the population is sheltered underground due to the Orson Welles 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast.
H.G. Wells.
No, H.G. Wells wrote the book. Orson Welles did
Orson
the radio
Welles
play.
did the radio play. I didn't
Yeah.
Yeah.
That didn't even cross my mind.
Yep. So it's
Wow.
a new origin for Superman, which honestly I think fits, because I've done a bunch of Googling in the last 2.5 minutes about what year Superman landed on Earth, and that is arbitrary to how old they want Superman to be in the story they're telling. So
Sure.
we're doing 1938 when Action Comics 1 came out. I think that's pretty fitting. TBH, I think Superman fans will be into it. Doing a Superman origin story seems hard, and I think doing it in a world that's 1% really paranoid about aliens is kind of fun.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll take it. Andrew.
Yeah, you know, it's been a couple years since the New 52, and X number of years before that was Flashpoint. So it's about time that we reset everything. Again, DC's itching for another reset.
They got their finger hovering over that reset button.
What better way? We've got it built in. We've got DC's Secret Wars right here. It's right here. We're just going to do Secret Wars.
It's D-Secret Wars.
Andrew, Gorilla Grodd is gonna come into your room and throw you around.
Yeah, no, I deserve
Just
it.
like
I deserve
Obama.
Just
Yeah,
like Obama.
I accept it and deserving of all my crimes.
All right. Great. Eric, bring us home.
So my first thought was obviously the greatest detectives of all time are going to deal with this Icelandic crimes. Like, okay, let's send Batman at him. You know, that could be kind of fun. Him going to Iceland where it's all dark all the time. He would really fit in there. Maybe we can throw Detective Chimp in there, the actual greatest detective of all time. But like, I think it would be more fun if this was one of the Robins' origin story, huh? Like, what if one of the Robins was like was the Polish? That'd be pretty funny, huh? Or maybe Mr. X like is just a Batman villain who comes to Gotham, and Mr. X is also Icelandic. I'm not really sure how to convey that in any sort of way. Like, I need to tell that on the page. Maybe,
hand that over to DC to connect those dots for you.
He
Yeah.
just speaks in italics, I guess, and how he heisted all the Bitcoin in Iceland. But I do like it more like what Andrew was doing was like, this is just a reference inside of just some random issue of a Batman comic where it's like, read the Vanity Fair piece from 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the most frustrating things that comics do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It really, really is. All right. Thank you, authors, for your pitches. The DC execs are going to take this over for me. So before they go off and deliberate, why don't you give us your closing statements?
Yeah, Kyle, DC execs, whoever is illustrating this graphic novel, what the world needs now is more media about the impact of media. And I am here to tell you that War of the Words is the perfect allegory for the happenings of today. Does it matter when today is? No. Because again, what the world needs is more media discussing the impact of media.
All right. Andrew.
Kyle, I wrote a whole season of the Umbrella Academy so that I could slow roll Secret Invasion.
Sure did.
I'm not saying I deserve to win, but damn it, it's deserving of something.
Deserves acknowledgement somehow. All right. Eric.
Wikipedia states that the SS Edmund Fitzgerald was an American Great Lakes freighter that sank in Lake Superior during a storm on November 10th, 1975, with the loss of an entire crew of 29 men. I'm just kidding. I decided to do this one instead because it was a contained story and heists are awesome. I don't know who would buy this graphic novel, but we sure did do it. And I think it's funny that this was the perfect crime. Like someone, Sindri / Mr. X called this the perfect crime and assumed it was the entire time. And like no one got hurt, honestly. I think that this is ultimately if DC wants to pivot, and I'm surprised that Graphic Novels hasn't done this, hasn't pivoted towards like the true crime-ification of this, just telling a story that everyone can enjoy and that some illustrator can go hog wild on, doing the characterizations of the crew, like describing crypto for 6 pages. I think that would be really fun. And I hope that I get $10 million for to make this from DC. Thank you. I cede my time.
So you can buy your own airplane hangar for undisclosed purposes.
Yeah, I've been draining a lot of energy buying crypto while doing the podcast.
All right. Well, the execs are going to go decide which one of these pitches they're going to buy. Why don't you guys give us some good vibes?
Yeah, Andrew, I loved your thing. When you
Thanks,
first
man.
said you were going to do Heaven's Gate, I was like, okay. But I really liked the direction you took with it, even if you did slow roll Secret Wars, which, you know, is pretty good. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, yeah, it's whatever.
Thanks.
I do think you wrote a season of Umbrella Academy. Word in, it's at least the third best season, maybe the second best if we're being
I'll
honest.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Also, there are two things I'm really familiar with, and it's professional Overwatch players and cults that Netflix has done documentaries of. And so you hit one of my two
one
buttons.
of those two things.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
If only you could have worked in professional Overwatch players, Andrew. You would have won Matt over.
Well, Matt's not hosting, so
there you go.
Eric, also excellent. I love the idea of we're doing a history that's like really recent and not past. I don't, what the hell does history mean? I also love the idea of a graphic novel that has to illustrate blockchain.
Yeah.
And the pages and pages and pages of artist renditions of cryptocurrency is really funny. And I like that a lot. I think that's really fun.
Matt, I really liked your answer. It was definitely the most heady answer, and one of the more heady answers that I feel like we've done in a while. And that's a good thing. Like when you initially read it off, like it didn't sink in, and then it was like halfway through, I was like, "Oh wait, okay, no, that's really cool. That's a really cool concept. A really cool concept of like exploring. I mean, it's the Twilight Zone, right? Like it's exploring just panic and the lack of a centralized resource of information." And I feel like there's been a lot of like end of the world type novels that explore that, but none of which that I know where nothing actually happened, which is really cool. Now, obviously, like the third act reveal that it did happen is very fun and funny and you know, dumb comic book stuff. But I think the point still lands because that's the point that you're making. So really, really cool. Eric, you brought a really cool story, and I totally agree with you. I think as somebody who stopped knowing how to read, can't read anymore, whatever, neurodivergence is a hell of a drug. I intake all of my information through alternative media like YouTube videos, podcasts, and comics, right? So, like you asked the question in your closing statement, like, why don't companies do it? Great question. I would totally read this as a graphic novel, like just learning more about stuff around the world. It feels cheaper, and frankly, like one, right, and two, like I think it is, having the visual medium there is a way to get difficult concepts like crypto and things that do require a little bit of hand holding. I mean, it's what's her name? Margot Robbie scene in Big Short, right? Like it's just that, but in graphic novel form. Really cool stuff.
Thanks. Here's the thing. I decided to, as I said before, summarize a Vanity Fair article for these. And you guys really took big swings, huh? Even with all of the twists and turns of yours, Matt, I did like your premise. I thought it was really fun, and funny. You like twisted it in so many ways that I didn't even know it was doing it. So it's like War of the Worlds. Then did the War of the Worlds actually happen?
Yeah.
And then I need to hear more about this one academic in 1940 who had bone spurs, so didn't go over to Europe for D-Day and instead did this nonsense. I need to hear way more about that dude. But no, it really leveled out there, and I'm like, oh, this is becoming like a real prepper story. And again, it was like The Walking Dead in my head of like, that's the kind of thing. I was saying to you, Andrew, I'm like, this is a graphic novel. Like Gerard Way is writing this already. And I don't think it's fair to you that you had to narrate all of it out loud because, man, I could see you getting this done in one comic book issue if you really needed to. And like,
yeah.
Doing this in like 16, you could just do this in 16 pages of like you having to describe everything. I'm like, that's a panel. That's a panel, my friends.
All of the exposition of the nonsense alien, like that's a page.
Yeah.
That's a whole page. Like you can
one page.
You can get that done quick.
So like, I just don't think it's fair because you did the assignment, but then you had to do the assignment, which is describe what you were doing. So it's like, it's almost like you having to do it undercut the fact that you did this the best out of all of us. And yeah, hey Kyle, good idea. This was a good idea. I know we joked about it at the beginning, but this was a fun one.
Yeah.
Really good one.
I liked it.
This was a fun one.
All right. So speaking of hosting, the execs and I are back where we've made our decision. To kick things off, Andrew, Unfortunately, that is just the Umbrella Academy.
That's understandable.
And DC can't publish it or they will get sued. So
for legal reasons, we can't provide any commentary on whether or not we want to publish the Umbrella Academy.
they are going to buy the book off of you so that when the Umbrella Academy publishes it, they can countersue. But
Yeah, fair.
it's never going to see the light of day.
I really need to encourage
unfortunately.
everyone to buy the paperback versions of the comics of the Umbrella Academy. This is just the second volume, but it is,
100%.
but this is in fact
100%.
in like 1960s Texas instead.
That brings us to Matt and Eric. And it was, I will be honest, it was really close. The execs really liked the heady nature of the Twilight Zone past you set up here, Matt. But unfortunately, I like heists so much, I tipped the scales towards Eric. We're making a heist book set in Iceland where everyone gets caught but still completely gets away with the crime they committed because the computers are still mining crypto to this day. Eric, you are our winner today. Congratulations.
Thank you, Matt.
Air horns, air
Matt,
horns.
your problem was that execs actually hate heady things.
True.
Famously.
Yeah. I went a step too far. Like you said, you go woke, you go broke. So
It's true. He called it. He did
called
call it.
That's going to do it for us. Before I dive into our pitch, Eric, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm feeling I'm doing a lot of stuff. We're still doing stuff over at During the Party. I'm the best DM in podcasting. Go listen to that if you like good actual play stuff. We're finishing up our third campaign, which is a world of plant and bug pirates. Think like Redwall meets Plants vs. Zombies meets One Piece. It's good shit. And
That's fun.
we do long
That is
campaigns
fun.
now, and because no one else does, because apparently they think they're on streamers. I don't understand
The
it.
buzz is over, so you're
Yeah.
not only the best DM, you've got the open seas, so to speak.
Truly. So we're
Yeah.
finishing that up, and like
Yeah.
we're making dice, and we're making some others. We have dice from Dispel Dice that are out, and we're doing another really cool thing. When does this come out?
The 5th of November.
Oh, the 5th of November. Duh. Yeah. So
Remember?
oh, of course I remember. But soon after this is my tabletop RPG is coming out, Model Our Nations, which is
Yeah.
a GM-less game. I'm calling it a Model UN like.
Oh,
where
shit.
all of you get to pretend you're part of the a world government, and you get to play out a secret meeting of it, which is really, really fun.
I saw you tweet that earlier, and it was like, I don't know what that means, but I like it. But I know it's for me.
I like a lot of those words.
I'll say the stages are, the first one is you do like light world building, or you put it into your current campaign, and then you set up all of your characters, and there's like a little character sheet. You get like fun moves to employ, and then you have to fill out the docket. So there's a part where you have to put motions in a docket.
I'm listening.
And then once you finish that and everyone races to put their thing in the docket, then you have to actually do the meeting based on the motions in the docket. And there's a winner at the end.
Looks like we have an activity when we're all in a cabin together.
Andrew, your
Woods.
nose is bleeding. You want to go
Oh,
take care of that?
No, I'm
He
good.
heard about
I'm
Model Our Nations and his nose started bleeding.
good. Yeah, no, I'm in like Flint, baby.
Yeah, but yeah, those are the two that I'll plug right now. I know if you guys, I mean, the three of you guys and maybe your listeners like it. We're Amanda, my wife and also CEO of Multitude, and I started a new podcast called Attach Your Resume, which are interviews with people with creative online jobs, actually trying to get some of their stories of work experiences down on tape and then sharing it with people, because like there's no job experience being passed on for anyone who entered the job market in 2012 onwards. So we'll have 3 episodes out by the time when this thing comes out. One with David Roth of Defector, Akila Hughes, who YouTuber who was like one of the first people to do the YouTube to Hollywood pipeline, and Josh Gondelman, everyone's favorite podcast guest / stand-up comedian, just talking about what it's like making a living as a creative person online. So yeah, those 3 things: join the party, model our nations, and attach your resume. 2 are podcasts. 1 is a tabletop RPG that comes out on November 15th.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you, listeners, for listening to Debate This. You can follow along with the arguments on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at DebateThisCast, or on our website at debatethiscast.com. Have you ever come to the end of an episode and found yourself wondering, man, I really like listening to Debate This 3 out of every 4 or 4 out of every 5 Tuesdays each month? I just wish I could somehow turn that 3 into a 4 or 4 into a 5.
What a simple thought that everyone has.
We all have been there. I know. Well, we have great news for you. It's called the Debate This Premium feed, and it is available right now through our Patreon at patreon.com/debatethiscast. Subscribing at the low price. I cannot stress how low this price is, everyone. Low price of $5 a month will get you all the current and past episodes of our exclusive Patreon show, Deconstructed, a Disney Channel original movie watch-along podcast, where we have just watched 2 decoms for the Spooktacular Express, Under Wraps.
Hell yeah.
The movie where Patrick Starr plays a bumbling mummy, and Halloween Town 2, which is the sequel to Halloween Town.
One of those is a good movie. The other one is also a movie.
One of those is a good movie, and I bet you can guess which one. It's 75% cheaper than your standard issue Battle Pass. No grinding necessary. Until next time, I've been your host, Kyle Harper.
I'm Matt. An audio production about a print production about an audio production, Cole.
I'm Andrew. Want to know more about the Cret War? Read it all in Secret Wars Battle World. Henderson.
And I'm Eric the Pink Silver.
And we're saying, thanks for debating with us. And if you think we're wrong, you can come fight us behind the swing sets, nerds.